Hello and welcome to, I can't remember the name of the podcast.
Gone to shite.
Gone to shite, yeah. My memory is obviously gone to shite. Yeah, on this week's show we're going to be discussing the 90s, early 2000s hit that was Friends. Hey, hello, welcome to the show. For any new listeners there, don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button. Feel like we need to be saying this for some reason, even though I don't think people are kind of like
no one pays any attention
stupid
to
or something,
yeah, exactly.
You know, where
you
it's, I think everyone else seems to do it, so you kind of go, oh, maybe you should be doing this, or leave us a review, a good review, not a bad review. Or leave a comment below telling us something about yourself, your deepest, darkest secret. Because just like Friends, we'll be there for you.
Yes.
We promise we won't blackmail you or use your deepest, darkest secret against you in any kind of cult-like way possible. On that note, we've also joined the Raelian UFO cult. After last week, we met up with some of them. They had some
very persuasive arguments.
Yes. This week's show, we're going to be talking about Friends. For people who, like, everyone knows who Friends are. I suppose the whole thing with one of the main points with Friends that I'd like to, I don't think there'll ever be a show as popular as Friends again. I think it was probably at that last moment in history where you had syndication was a thing. It was like TV, so everyone was watching it.
Everyone was watching it at the same time, and everyone was watching it weekly and talking about what happened the next week and all the rest.
But then after the run of it, because it was so successful, the same was with Seinfeld and Cheers, I suppose, with syndication. Yeah. Where it's like the show was played all around the world and people like constantly played. Like where we were kind of like there was a Channel 4, and Channel 4 had an offshoot channel called More 4 that used to just play
non-stop reruns
shows
of comedies and stuff,
and like Friends was like they'd have Friends weekends.
Heavy
so
rotation.
It'd be like 24 hours a day Friends, so you just end up, because I fucking hated Friends when it was on originally. The first 2 seasons maybe I wasn't, I just thought, oh god, this is schmaltzy. It seemed like it was nearly another show we're going to have coming up soon is about grunge, but it nearly seemed to me at the time that it was like exploiting the grunge kind of scene, you know, even though that they didn't have grunge. It was just there were singles came out before, and I kind of thought, because I liked Singles, the movie at the time, where people like, it's a Cameron Crowe movie about like young singles in the it's very similar to Friends. I think it's hard to look at Friends if you've seen Singles and go it has to be some way kind of like influenced by it. Like there's 6 friends in it as well, and there's different kind of the characters are different, but there has to be some thing. But that's what it felt like to me, and it's what it was overly small. See, the first season was, I think, as it developed, it got less, and as well coming for me, I was like a big Seinfeld fan.
Yeah.
Fran. And like Seinfeld, it was just like there were all these horrible characters in it at the time, and then like you got friends that are all like, I'll be your friend.
I love you, guys.
Yeah. Well, what did you like it when it started?
I did, yeah. Like, I mean, I would have been in secondary school when it was sort of, you know, at its peak and all the rest. So it would have been a thing like you go into school on the Monday morning or whatever, and it's like, oh my god, did you see what happened on Friends the other night? Oh. And it was like, I mean, fucking you had all these kids kind of going, no, I think I'm more of a Monica. What do you think? Do you think you're a bit of a Phoebe? Oh, I think I'm a bit of a Chandler. And that was, I think, the sort of probably the winning aspect of it as well. It had these 6 characters that everyone could relate to in some way. If you're a bit of a nerd and into sort of your history, or a Ross, if you're a bit of a, you've taught yourself you're a quick wit, oh look, I'm like Chandler, ho ho ho. But of course, to be thinking of yourself like Chandler, you had to be a bit of a Chandler as well, didn't you?
Yeah, you have to be kind of, I'm the funny one, where it's like, no, you're not the funny one.
Exactly.
If you think you're the funny one, you're not the funny one.
Exactly. But the same for the girls as well. I mean, they had the sort of the ditzy kind of the blondie, well, I won't say blondie, bimbo-y type one, who actually actually had a heart of gold with Rachel, and then you had sort of the more down to earth one who she was funny because she was chubby when she was younger, and she's a bit of a clean freak, and then you have, you know, sort of the hippy dippy.
Well, I think Monica's
Phoebe.
Chandler was late developing with it, like all that stuff about her being fat, and it was the same with Ross. I think it was, I can't remember, it was either because we just finished rewatching
The entire series, yeah.
But like their characters, like they were very different, I think, at the start, which most sitcoms, like they developed over time, played to their strengths and stuff.
Yeah,
Ross's
just developed the
character, like
he was the best trajectory ever in it, I think. Yeah, he just started off as your general sort of a hangdog kind of nerd, and by the end of it, then he was like this hilarious sort of psycho, you know.
him and Rachel break it. Like, I mean, the whole thing was hanging on really for season 1 and season 2. Ross and Rachel getting together. That's all that everyone was. So, and Rachel's fucking hair at the time. I seem to remember, it's like, oh my god, how did Rachel get her hair cut?
Yeah.
But that was like the big thing was Ross and Rachel. So it was nearly like a soap opera more than a sitcom.
Will they? Won't they? Oh my god, are they going to kiss? Oh.
And then after they broke up, I think that's when the show became really good.
Yeah.
Like looking back on it, season 1 was good as well. And season 2, you can see the money thrown into it though, because even in season 1 they had like guest stars in it. And season 2 then were really sucked on, like with Jean-Claude Van Damme. I know people nowadays might go, oh fucking Jean-Claude Van Damme.
But back in the day.
But like back in the day, yeah. And
Big star.
oh god, what's her name? Erin Brockovich.
Julia Roberts.
Julia Roberts, you know, people like that, and like Julia Roberts at that stage, she was,
humongous.
you couldn't get a bigger star than Julia Roberts. Which it's really weird with a lot of these stars where you kind of look back and kind of go, geez, they're not, like, they're still brilliant actors, but, well, maybe other than Jean-Claude Van Damme, but you know, they're not as big, like Julia Roberts ain't, like, or maybe she is, I don't know.
I think people just had their heyday, didn't they? I mean, like, you know, you would have had, there's loads of different, like, with Elle Macpherson pop up at one stage as well. Like,
George
you know,
Clooney.
Yeah, like, you did have a lot of people just popping in. Bruce Willis, you know, in later days and all the rest.
Vladimir Putin, that episode, where they tortured Ross's monkey, kind of saying that he was a spy.
Absolutely. But yeah, I mean, it was bizarre, I suppose, as well, now that you mentioned Marcel the monkey, that was just a random subplot thrown in that Ross just got a monkey and was like, yeah, fine.
I'm sure that was part of the thing where they were like, monkeys are really hot right now. If we get monkeys in it, because a lot
Marcel,
of the first season and second season, there's parts where I kind of felt nearly, I know they were saying it's the people, I can't think of it was Marta
Kaufman or something.
Kaufman, yeah, those people that were involved, that they were saying it was their thing, that they were, but like, you know, your studios with it, there was so much money put into that. Like Friends was everywhere, like even before it started, the advertisement for it.
Were they the first ones to get $1 million per episode each, I think, wasn't it?
No, in Seinfeld they would have been at, but like Seinfeld, I think the last season they were getting big money. Cheers probably as well, definitely. I think because that was the whole thing when you look back at like the history of Seinfeld, where Larry David was always going, how come Ted Danson gets this? And they're like, well, Ted Danson's a star. You're the fucking but yeah, I think probably not, I think it was well before the last season. Like they were, it's probably strange for people who weren't around at the time. Like they were everywhere.
Super famous. Yeah.
It was like, it was just fucking like I mean, for people to come from, because none of them were really big stars beforehand.
Which was, I suppose, a sort of a thing that they actually did purposefully as well, right? So one person wouldn't overshadow the rest of the cast.
Yeah,
you know?
but as well as probably getting cheaper people.
Of course,
you know?
yeah.
But like, I mean, they were like, I mean, to go from that level of fame where they were like, even we were looking at the reunion, and Matt LeBlanc was saying about one day he was sitting down and there was like fucking 6 houses kind of like shots of, and he was like, it was all their houses on the news and from helicopters, and
yeah,
he was like, what the fuck is going
there's
on?
A helicopter outside my house.
But it was like everyone was just
Friends crazy.
caught on them, and their lives, their personal lives were held under micro. And I think it's in fairness to them, there was never anything. If there was something bad, it would have fucking came out, because they were under such scrutiny. Yeah. There was never anything untoward. I did really come across that they were probably in their own little kind of shit, and they still seem fairly close, kind of from the reunion thing. Apart from Matthew Perry, who's dead now. He died. Was it only a few months ago?
Very recently, I know. And It was shocking at the time as well, but I think if it was anybody else, people probably would have been more shocked, which is terrible. But he always had these demons and these struggles.
There was always drug problems and alcohol problems. Even like during Friends, that was what like the tabloid press used to cover a lot. When you were looking back at Friends, you could kind of see it with him at points where he's like a bit puffy and stuff, where you kind of go, oh yeah, that would have been that time. And like we were only saying, there was one season, I think, like... Now, fucking Monica and Rachel, they were like nothing in it anyway, but they were told at one point that they were too heavy.
Yeah, lose more weight.
And now they looked, actually, there was one season where they looked really unhealthy, and you kind of go, who the fuck was saying that to these people? I know,
geez, like, Monica turned sideways and you can't see her kind of a thing. You know, there's just this weird pressure on women to, all the time, you must be thinner, be this, be that, you know, be toothier, be boobier, you know, big hairier and all that.
But these were people that were at the top of their fame, that they were ever, and like me, I think really consistently from season 1, maybe season 2 when they got massive, to the end of Friends, it was big. It didn't seem to have any layoff of it or kind of get any kind of like massive criticism of it.
Or anything like that.
Like say with The Office, after Michael Scott left.
Yeah, the American Office.
People were like, oh, it's gone shit, which it did that season. Then the last season kind of came back and saved it a bit. But there's nothing like, I found the second last season of Friends when we're looking at it, all right, they focused too much on the relationships again. I think it was like whoever was showrunning that season didn't have a fucking clue what they're doing. It was all over the place. I think it was really misjudged to have Joey and Rachel, and then kind of like in the last season they were like, how do we write ourselves out of this?
Let's get back out of this corner.
But where you see that happen constantly, for anyone who wants to kind of look at a show where you can see the difference in showrunners that the impact it has, look at fucking Supernatural. Like there's 15 seasons of it, and when it jumps from when Kripke left in season 5 and season 6 where it came back, totally different show.
Absolutely,
It wasn't as good, and then it progressively got worse.
It had its upswings again, but it had very, very severe downswings.
But like, you know, there was one where you could see it's like people would write themselves in a corner with stuff, and then someone would come in and go, we gotta fucking try and get this show under control, let's bring it back to the basics or whatever, and they try and get rid of all these things, but it take nearly half a season to write out,
untangle and explain it. Exactly.
And then by the time they're after doing, you know, where it was just like, so you can see kind of like sometimes that people are respectful of the mythology of shows, or kind of like what they lay down, they can fucking
true to
get
the
into
character, I suppose. Because there's a lot of times with Supernatural where it's like, Dean wouldn't have done that, Sam wouldn't have done that, why would Castiel do that? And you know, it's,
but they made it really overly complicated as well at one point. But like in Friends, I think season 10, but was there 11 seasons? Well, it was the second last season anyway, where they had that whole thing with Rachel and Joey when they got together,
really sort of out of left field.
It just didn't.
See, I think they're probably panicking. They probably want to show Joey maturing a little bit, because like up till then he was just how you doing kind of playboy and all the rest, and he never really had serious relationships. So maybe it was like, all right, we got to try and do this.
I think they were after. They probably, because when Monica and Chandler got together, I think they kind of went, where's the drama? So they were probably like, maybe if we do the same with, because they had Phoebe with Mike, and then they tried to cause the drama with that as well by breaking them up, where it's like, sometimes you don't need to do this shit kind of with it, which that season was all about the drama,
endless drama.
Whereas like you look at the Office was most successful with Pam and Jim when they got together, and it was like, they're not going to have any, they love each other, they're just going to fucking,
there's not going to be any great big fucking arguments. But I suppose as well, looking back, I mean, like the whole thrust of the show was kind of, I think the high concept for it or whatever was like, it's that period of your life where your friends are your family, and it's like, it's in your sort of 20s where you're after leaving the nest of your own house, and it's before you settle down with your sort of your long-term partner, you start having the kids and buying the houses and stuff. So I suppose looking back on that, I can remember a lot of people at that age were full of fucking drama. It was always like, oh god. And you know, especially in little groups like that, it did end up getting very incestuous. You'd have like fucking somebody be dating someone one week, and then they'd split up and the friend group would be sort of rattled, and then they'd start going with someone else. So in that way, it rings kind of true to me at some point.
Oh yeah. But it's just kind of like following the way that the show was, to going back to that, you know, where the show, I don't know, it was after finding, I think, a maturity level with them all, and then it was just like, you don't really need to be doing, you know, you don't need to be creating these issues
to battle,
because they're all in their 30s at this stage as well, you know, where it was like they were kind of like at the point, and it just didn't really seem like the kind of thing that they would be doing. I don't know. But other than that, it's, I suppose, who was your favourite character?
I see it changes every day. Like, I mean, but at the end, it probably is Ross, to be honest with you, because it is. He just seemed to be so hilarious as he went further and further along and get further and further upset into his, sort of psychosis. And I think he was just willing to do a lot more than some of the other characters. Like, the leather pants episode was fucking hysterical.
He was fucking brilliant. It was just
physical comedy.
Looking at the thing about him, like, I didn't realise how highly regarded he was as well as a comedian, and kind of like that they really, out of all of them, they were like really going after him to be in it.
He was the first one signed on, and Ross was actually written with him in mind. I think they actually had to convince him to come back. Apparently, I think he was saying he had some really horrible experience with TV, and he was like, no, I'm going back, I'm doing stage, I'm doing theatre, and that's it. So they had to really persuade him to come back, and they're like, look, we wrote it specially for you, please come back.
He was fucking brilliant.
It's great that he did, yeah.
He was, like, I do think it, because when they got away from having him as this lovesick fucking puppy thing to this kind of that he could snap, and just getting into, when he was getting into the wacky adventures, it was like he was far funnier, I think, than Chandler. Chandler, I think, at the time, because there wasn't really characters like that. Yeah,
the kind of the sarcastic kind of like, oh, here's a quick snappy comeback kind of a thing.
Yeah, like a lot of people love Chandler and Joey, but when you go back looking at it now, like, Chandler is probably my least favourite character, and he becomes like a little bit overly emasculated as it goes on.
Yeah, they kind of play into the whole, I mean, I know they had the whole thing like, Chandler, is that a girl's name and all this, but they did kind of play into the whole, he can't do anything, he's not a manly man or anything like that. But I suppose for Ross, like, I mean, I just used to find it absolutely hysterical, because you knew people like him as well.
Oh God,
that had their PhDs and they were like into their sense, not looking at anyone here.
Yes.
Sort of all this, it was just anything that he actually put his hand to, you kind of go, that's spot on. I know somebody like that, and that's the way they act.
So pretentious.
This is it, yeah, and full of himself, and so like, yes, I'm so in touch with my feelings. And I was like, no, you're not.
But like, even with the kind of like, I do karate. There was like, the character was so well realised, whereas like with Chandler and Joey, I think they were just, Joey's character
fleshed out, I suppose,
really came along like a lot over the whole kind of show. Phoebe's character, there wasn't a lot of growth, and there was points with her where she'd have kind of like certain things, but there wasn't anything. I think she always felt a bit kind of just in the background,
she was always kind of the outsider. But I think as well, she was probably the one as well who kind of held her ground the most. She was her own person, and she didn't do anything to fall in with the rest of the crowd, and she was known as the weird one, because whatever she was thinking, she'd just say it, and she'd say, well, fuck it, I've had a tough life, I'm just going to do what I want to do from now on, which is pretty admirable in itself, that she did have this horrible supposed backstory life and all the rest, and she just turned out to be such a lovely hippy dippy, sort of at one with the world kind of a character.
But it's like, I mean, I suppose the whole thing, really, it was Rachel's show from the start, because like, I mean, the whole thing was around Rachel coming in after that,
running away from her wedding.
So for a long time they focused a lot on Rachel. I have to say, in fairness, looking back to it, because for a long time I used to think, oh Jesus, Jennifer Aniston, fucking, she was very funny actually, very, in bits, very funny, and she did, when like, she developed a character, or she kind of came into herself with it, probably around season 2 as well, when they got away from the whole kind of just being after men thing. Like, she you could see, she, like, I mean, I suppose she probably did very well afterwards, like starring in films and stuff. She can act, like, they can all act. It's like Matt LeBlanc seems to be out of the whole lot, and didn't have much of a career afterwards.
Of course, there's a spin-off, Joey, which didn't really do all that great.
I think that kind of really hurt him, like, because Joey was probably one of the most popular, and as well, it would have been Frasier, would have been like the thing for Cheers that went on. It was probably more popular than Cheers, and probably laid down that pathway, saying, right, kind of like, have your popular characters come out of it and do their own thing. And Joey was a fucking mess of a show. I remember, I don't think I even followed it at the time. Looked at a couple of episodes and was like, this is bad. Like,
having said that, again, we watched the reunion, which happened only recently, not just towards the end of COVID, and he seemed probably one of the best adjusted out of, because he was the one that didn't have any plastic surgery. He'd aged gracefully enough. He was gone grey. He was after
I don't think Phoebe had any plastic surgery
himself and
either,
Phoebe, and again, I suppose the two, like, I mean, she was always sort of seen as no, I'm fine.
Well, I think she was older than a lot of them as well, was the thing. I think she was like, not like by a lot, but like, I think she might have been in her 30s when they started in, where the rest of them were in their 20s, with it, so she probably, I don't know, she always just seemed slightly, and even when they were
more sensible or something,
slightly more out of the group as well with stuff. But Matt LeBlanc did Top Gear and he did a load of other shows. It's not like he was doing nothing. Matthew Perry, I think from all accounts, don't want to speak ill of the dead, but he kind of shot himself in the foot. He had like a shot at Hollywood. He was in a couple of big Hollywood movies, and apparently his behaviour on set was like wasn't the best, and it kind of like, you know, finished him off that no one really wanted to work with him. From different reports on it as well. Matthew Perry, kind of before he died, he released a biography. I haven't read it, but people that have talked about it, they were saying that like it's not something that you should, you know.
Right, he didn't paint himself in glory, was it?
Yeah. Well, no, I think it was just he didn't paint other people in glory. It was a lot of things. I think he slagged off an awful lot of people saying that they were talentless and he was more talented and more deserving than them. You know, there was a lot of stuff in it. And like, I mean, the thing is, I don't know, I haven't read it, but like you could see it even on the reunion show. People didn't seem to want to spend as much time with him as they were spending with each other.
Well, I suppose that's, I mean, you can infer, I suppose, lots of different things really when you look at it, if you just have different ideas in your mind, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it was absolutely tragic though, because he did seem to be a likeable, funny guy.
Oh yeah. There was no fucking shit about him being on like Epstein's Island or anything like that. Like, I do think it's people handle fame differently, and like I don't know how you could handle with that level of fame going from anonymity nearly to like everybody knowing your face and everybody talking about you like they know you, and you know, media stalking you around just to try and see you falling out of a nightclub or something. And then like afterwards, when Matt's gone away to try and kind of fit in, and people are like, oh well, like you're never going to have that. Like Jennifer Aniston definitely was in like a ton of films. Courtney Cox did extremely well. David Schwimmer went on as a director with stuff, and he was very successful as a director. Matt LeBlanc, he had Joey and like
Top Gear, as you said.
Phoebe, she's had a couple of different shows as well on movies and stuff. But like Matt LeBlanc was in like movies, but it's just, you know, I suppose people struggle with stuff. So
well, that's the thing. I think when you hit that big that early in your career, very little is going to compare to it afterwards. They're all in their 20s. They're all absolute mega stars. They're in everybody's home every, I don't know, whatever night it showed, Saturday night, Thursday night, whatever. Everybody was familiar with him. Everyone thought they knew him. So then when that all ends, it's very hard to deal with that and to try and replicate that level of success.
And as well, it wasn't, like we were saying, it wasn't just an American or a Western world phenomenon. It was a global phenomenon.
Yeah, it was.
It was like Friends was massive over in Japan and Korea and a lot of, because of syndication. And I suppose it is like you were saying at the start of it, it's like everyone can see themselves in different once you know they got that very right with it. But it's one of the characters, they're all really likeable.
That's the thing, like, I mean, what I can remember, and another thing as well which probably helped, was they did release Friends in box sets as well, which you could rent. When we used to have video stores, you could rent them from video stores.
That's right, they would have been some of the first ones that you could get. They were fucking ever, and they were cheap to buy as well.
That's what I was going to say as well, because that was like, it was my comfort thing when I was in college. If I was like going through a stressful period, trying to get assignments done or something like that, I'd be like, fuck it, I'm just going to rent, you know, a box set of Friends, and I'm going to sit down with a drink or something like that and just chill out and, you know, kind of, you know, just comedy, take your mind off things. And like, I would have rented out Friends numerous times, different box sets, and then of course what happens is the video stores, they sell off their old stock, so I ended up getting a load of box sets of Friends for like fucking £3 or something like that each, which was brilliant at the time. And I think that kind of helped as well, because like I passed it on then to, I have a younger cousin who was maybe 10 years younger than me.
She was mad into Friends, wasn't she?
So I passed it on to her, and now there's a whole new generation again of like, you know, Gen Z and all the rest are kind of, they're going through their retro phase and they're back discovering the 90s again. They're all like, yeah, Friends is brilliant. So it's one of these things that keeps going. It's
one of, like, I mean, as popular as Seinfeld is, and as popular as Seinfeld was, I don't think people, there's a certain type of person, I think our generation,
I think possibly because of Gen X, it's that whole kind of sarcastic, kind of like disengaged with the world, nihilism, you know.
But it's nice to people. It's like people loving, like why I love and you love it. It's Always Sunny. They're fucked up, they're flawed characters.
They're
and it's the same
people,
with like It's Always Sunny. Or sorry, with Seinfeld, they were like, and even though as successful as Jerry is, he's still
a horrible person at the core of it. He's like, you know, dumping women for the most like stupid of reasons, and, you know, sort of shitting all over other comedians, and just generally,
and things constantly go wrong for him. Like with George and Elaine, even like, because Elaine was seen to be like
together and successful,
and like Elaine just destroys her life fucking every step of the way. There is always
ruins her career, exactly.
But even the whole thing where it's like where I always love the episode where Elaine just fucked off, where she was, I'm not friends with you. I've found kind of like
another friend
the
group,
bizarro friends, and then she's like pushing him like no, and she's hurting him. They're like, my God, why are you doing this?
You're so mean and so nasty. You're such a horrible person. And she's like, oh God, I'll just go back to the nasty group of friends.
Whereas kind of like in Friends, you didn't have their. Like, so I think for all generations, it's that kind of Disneyfication.
It's feel good rather than, it's kind of like I said, it was my feel good kind of thing. It was like my easy viewing kind of a thing. And it's like sitting down with a lovely warm blanket and just cuddling up and having like milk and cookies or something like that.
Saying all that, one of the things when we're looking back on it, there's a lot of bits in it. I'm surprised that people haven't went, that's problematic nowadays.
Yes.
There's a lot of homophobic jokes in it. And like, there's like nearly a little bit too much, even kind of like where I'm kind of one of these, all right, it's of its time, like, it's people didn't.
There was an awful lot of like, oh my God, that's gay, or oh my God, I can't do that, or oh, I'm wearing women's panties. Or whatever.
There was a lot of where it's stuff where nowadays I'm surprised that like people haven't.
I know it hasn't been like cancelled or something like that. Well, especially as well with like sort of body acceptance and stuff like that. The amount of shit that like gets nibbled at. Monica, when she was in the fat suit she was wearing, and the terrible thing as well, like the fat suit that she was wearing at the time. That's probably what most of the population looks like now, because it wasn't actually all that fat. It just looks kind of chubby, but yet she was this appalling, like, oh my God, she used to eat 20 cakes in one sitting, and Ross is afraid of her eating him kind of thing.
But he was saying that at one point where he used to
he was in therapy. He used to dream I was getting eaten. It was like, by what? By Monica.
But that's the thing with Friends as well. As it went on, it got more silly.
Yeah.
Like there was more, so like Ross and Monica got really, really good. Their relationship, even to the where it was near the last season where they're talking about when they used to have the flashbacks.
Yeah.
And they had that flashback, and it was like her first kiss was also Ross's first kiss.
Accidentally kissed each other in the dark. But that was the thing as well, I suppose. That was something I thought was great. All three women were very open to doing physical comedy and poking fun at themselves. And I think out of the three of them, Monica was actually the best.
She was very, very good.
She had this kind of, I don't know, she was just hilarious in the way she'd move at times. She had this kind of gangly way of doing things, and it was just, she was all up for setting herself up like to be the butt of the joke, which I think is great. Because normally women are, they're in these kind of things just to be sort of on the outside of things, or there to be looked at or whatever. And now, of course, the three girls are very pretty, and there was that pressure to like have different outfits every show or whatever, and do their hairstyles and all the rest. But she was quite happy, like, oh my God, they had to piss on me because I got stung by a jellyfish. It's just all these kind of things.
I think Courtney Cox was probably the best out of like Monica's character, especially the way Monica's character went, where she got kind
so
of
neurotic.
nuttier and nuttier and nuttier. But there was one point, I think, when herself and Chandler got together, it was in that season as well, where it's quite obviously, I think, with a different showrunner or someone fucking around with the script, she got kind of nearly really unlikable at one point.
She got a bit shrill, I think,
and it was like, that's not Monica. Monica's like a very kind kind of person in it, and she's very hard, she's someone who was picked on when she was younger, and she's...
Yeah, that's it. She's going to be a nice person, because anyone that's picked on when they're younger, they do tend to end up being nice to others.
But even though she's like, what you call it, competitive and stuff, she's like, it's endearing rather than annoying. Like, but
it's always
with that, she became...
Yeah, she became a bit too like domineering rather than endearing, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, and Rachel kind of became a bit of a slut. And it was just that whole thing with Gavin as well. And that was just bizarre, and he just didn't.
He was a bit of a wooden plank, alright.
At all.
But you see, I think they kept doing that. They kept trying to bring in outside people for the love interest and all the rest, and they kind of figured that it didn't really work. The only ones that did tend to was Janice. Janice
I think she was in every season.
Yeah,
she was brilliant.
She kept on boomeranging back into the group, and she was hilarious every time she came back, because it was like they just couldn't get away from her, and it's just that voice and that persona.
It was just kind of like the way that she was aware of how much Chandler hated her.
Yeah, but she loved it.
Joey,
took glee in it. Yeah.
Even like when she was with Ross, and she was like, only one left to go, Joey. Joey. There was one episode near the end where I was fucking really, really doing my head and cracking up with it, whereas when they were like locked in the thing and they were trying to get in, and they were like, don't let Joey look at you, his eyes, he can talk you into doing anything, and it was Joey had his head in and his eyes all open, and he was like, open the door, just look at me, and they're like, don't look at him.
But even with that, I mean, Janice, she got set up as this really annoying, horrible character. But even at that, she actually turned out very likable in the end because, you know, while she was a bit shrill, she was nasal, she had that god-awful laugh and the horrible sort of attitude. She actually was still genuinely very caring. And when she came up against like Monica and Chandler when they were a couple, she was always there for him. She was always giving him advice and encouraging him on. And anytime Chandler were kind of like trying,
it was Chandler always actually came across as the
horrible. Yeah, he basically was bullying her kind of thing and like being horrible. And eventually, when Chandler was like he's pretending he still had feelings for her, she's like, "No, I can't be around you. This is terrible. What about Monica?" And you know, she was kind of the stand-up character in the whole thing.
But that was the thing about like when you do look back at it, it was very superficial. A lot of the writing in it as well. Whereas like when they did it in Seinfeld, it was to highlight how horrible of person Jerry really was at the core, whereas like he'd break up with someone even though she had a great personality and he was mad about her just because she had big hands.
Yeah.
Whereas in this, it was like, no, this is normal. Like everything, it should be on face value. So with Chandler and Janice, it was always because Janice's laugh. It was never about her personality or kind of anything. You know, it was just you know, and there was constantly that with kind of like
God,
where it was all
Joey
about
as well. Like,
Joey was a horrific pervert.
He was just like, he just like sidled up to like, and he admitted himself like it's like intern, so they're like way younger than him and all the rest. He sidles up, gets, you know, sort of how are you doing and all the rest, sleeps with them, and that's it, never calls him the next day. And he's got this absolute parade of women around the city that are like, after being jilted by him, used and discarded, and it's actually getting so bad that he ends up circling around and starts hitting on the same women again, or their flatmates. And he's like, how dare they not remember me? It's like,
he should really have had AIDS. That's how they should have finished Friends, was with like Joey dying on his with AIDS.
Or some sort of horrible, you know.
And then they're like, oh my gosh. We get him a blood transfusion, or I got a blood transfusion off him or something like that. But it's just, there was a lot of stuff, but did they get away with it?
Well, they do, because you see at the other point as well, they have the whole trope of, well, Joey's a loyal friend. You know, he was always like, no, I can't do that. That was it. They have their redeeming factors. But like, even say, it's people might say, oh well, it was of its time, but it wasn't. Like, because Seinfeld was before Friends, and like, I mean, they robbed a lot of episodes off of Seinfeld as well, like nearly blatantly robbed stories from Seinfeld. But like Seinfeld, they had one episode where they kind of like were talking about, because it was never like a thing about people being gay. They'd never be like, oh, you're gay or anything like that. Where it was a thing where George and Jerry were mistaken as a gay couple, and they'd always be, not that there's anything wrong with it, not that where they just wanted wanted to get across saying we are not fucking like mocking anyone for their sexuality or whatever. This is not that kind of show. Whereas like a lot of Friends jokes for a while was around kind of like, you know, oh, you're gay. Exactly, they give each other a hug and they'd be like, oh, this is a bit gay, let's do a manly handshake kind of a thing. But I suppose again, it is of its time. It was of its time. That would have been it was a very laddish culture back then as well. Ladette culture as well. Everyone was very like,
it's not as if it was inciting hatred or anything like that.
But that's because they had a number of characters anyway in it that would have been sort of, you know, a little bit flamboyant, a little bit, you know, unusual and all. It
was nearly always waiters.
That's
gay.
True, I suppose.
It was nearly always, or kind of like they'd have like
and the hilarious thing was Gunther, you would have thought would have been like the absolute stereotype of a gay person, but he was mad about Rachel, you know. So you have all of this kind of subversion.
Gunther is dead as well.
Oh bloody hell. And it was lovely seeing him at the reunion. He was so happy to be back.
Yeah, it was quite obvious as well why he was on Zoom, kind of like afterwards, because like he would have died shortly afterwards, like the poor guy. But yeah, the reunion special was weird. Like when that was coming out at the time, I thought, oh, they're going to do another
final episode, but it was just them sitting down at that James Corden asshole.
Oh yeah, God, James Corden was even like he was rushing through it, and he was just like that.
You could tell he had like cards that he wanted to hit. I have a question to ask, and I want to ask it.
I was like, this is my show, and it's like,
no, it's not.
Piss off. But it was weird, especially just after finishing the show. Yeah,
because I think the first time we watched it, that was our second time watching the reunion special. The first time we just watched it, it was like, oh God, but it was like literally we went from being late 20-something-year-olds to like 50-something-year-olds, and
we were like watching it every day for like the last month maybe. And
it was a very jarring jump, and you're kind of like, wow, time really does you know, rule all things.
It was weird where you kind of go, fuck it, that much time has passed since it was, where was it? I think it was 2002 or 2003 was the last
you're talking
episode,
like 20 odd years ago. So
it's crazy that it still holds up. You remember like in the 80s, if we were looking at stuff from the 70s or the
like
60s,
Taxi or something like that.
Well, Taxi would have still been like only 10 years old.
I suppose, that's true.
But, you know, say, I don't know, say stuff like Steptoe and fucking Son.
Or, that's true, yeah.
Bewitched.
Yeah.
Where it's like just like from a
totally different era. But that's the kind of the odd thing, because as I said, you've got like Gen Z and they're all like, they're rewatching Friends and they're enjoying it. And it's kind of like, you know, you don't see them going back watching Cheers, for example. You don't see them going back watching, you know, any of those older ones, or, you know, MASH even, or something like that. You know, it's like, no.
Oh, God, MASH. Even when MASH was on at the time, MASH was very adult.
Yeah.
I think, wasn't it? I think that's where Cheers probably goes wrong as well. It was very, because like people were a little bit older, but it always seemed, and it's very much focused around the bar. And like, I mean, Cheers is brilliant. People really should go back looking at Cheers.
It's great, yeah.
Like, I think probably the first couple of seasons with Diane in it, wasn't it? I think when Kirstie Alley came into it, that's when the show really became itself, because Kirstie Alley was basically the female version of Sam. And it was like he's equal. And as well, Sam got stupider in it, and Woody, and they all just got a bit stupider. And there was like one of the fucking, my favourite bit out of Cheers was, I remember, and this was like a common thing in Cheers. In a couple of episodes you'd have conversations like this where it was like Cliff and Norm were sitting down, and Cliff just turned around to Norm and started talking about, you know, that Casper, the friendly ghost. And like, you know, he said, how come like it always ends or it starts off with him meeting new kids, but at the end of the episode he's like, and they're like, I think he secretly devours the children and he's feasting on there. So, you know, it's just
as random things. Actually, funny enough, I think most of the cast of Cheers were probably around the same age as the cast of Friends as well.
They probably were. They were a lot younger than
but
that.
That's, I know for a fact Norm and Cliff were only in their early 30s, like, and like looking at it now, you're kind of like, geez, they look like they're in their 50s.
And like Norm is Jason Sudeikis' uncle.
Yeah, that's also a big comedy talent.
But like Sam is, because Sam was such a lech and a great. He was basically Joey, probably,
except much worse. A bit more sort of, I don't want to say rapier, but a little bit more forceful. But that
was the thing, kind of like from, I think when Kirstie Alley came into it, whoever took over with the writing as well, they got into it where he's more of a buffoon and things were going wrong for him.
Yeah.
And as well, there was always this thing about Ted Danson being bald, this joke about where he wasn't, but like, it was this, so they used to play up to that in the show. There was a lot of really, really good stuff in Cheers. But yeah, like you were saying, they seemed older. I think we're with Friends, it is
it is, I think. I think that's why it was such a big hit, because the age group they were targeting at were their own age and that little bit younger, so teenagers who that was what they were aspiring to in the next stage of life. I can't wait to move out of home. It's going to be cool hanging out with all my friends, and we can go down the coffee house and we can, you know, all of this stuff. And I think that's probably why it hit so well with that particular cohort. It's like it's our lives on screen kind of thing, and like they're actually kind of having fun and they're out doing things. And in fairness, they actually address quite a lot of weighty topics as well, like, you know, thinking about, you know, sort of abortion, surrogacy, infertility, all of that kind of stuff, you know, sort of death. They had an awful lot
I think
of really
they
handled
stuff. That very well, like with the infertility stuff with Chandler and Monica.
That's it. And I mean, even like you go back to the very first episode or two, Ross's wife, she discovers she's a lesbian, and you know, he handles that so well. I know it's played for comedy as well, but they actually handle it well. He's co-parenting a child with his ex-partner who is after shacking up with her lesbian lover, and I mean, it was just, it normalised, I think, a lot of those kind of relationships as well, which I thought was quite nice.
Yeah,
you know?
There was never really any. It was more just so the thing that Susan was after. Was it Susan was the girlfriend?
Yeah.
That she was after coming in and breaking up the marriage thing, but there was like
but there was no judgment. There were
some really funny jokes, actually, kind of.
There was indeed, but there was no judgment about being, you know, sort of divorced pair. Like, I know there was the whole running gag of like, Jesus, Ross will marry anything.
Divorce her.
Exactly, but there was no sort of stigma attached to, well, we're co-parenting separate, you know, we're sort of, you know, Ben will be with me one week and he'd be with his mum the next week, and it kind of established nice, supportive, because they were supportive parents and they supported each other as well as wanting the best for their kid, rather than the whole trope of like, you know, fucking, you know, sort of my baby mama and she's demanding this, and you know, the way a lot of other shows are portrayed, like our deadbeat father, whatever. They're all very much involved in each other's lives and very supportive, you know. But
that is true, actually. That's a good point. For, I suppose that's like, but that was like the 90s, wasn't it? Where you did have, there was still a lot of these hang-ups where it was like, well, not hang-ups, but like, you know, say gay jokes and kind of, you know, people were, and it was kind of new because, like, I mean, as well, people mightn't realise this, but like, it was illegal to be gay in a lot of countries, that, like Western countries, not just like fucking Russia, and places. So like,
gay marriage is only legalised in Ireland recently, like in the last 5 years or something.
we're one of the first fucking countries to do it.
Yeah, which is ridiculous.
Like, I mean, people could get blessings and stuff like that, but we're all about, like, recognised by state and stuff.
Yeah.
But, so, like, at that time, for a lot of people it was new, because a lot of people were in closets, or it was, like, an underground thing, or it was a hidden kind of a thing.
And yet, even, like, I mean, they had the whole lesbian wedding thing, but it was done so tastefully, like, you know, it was just the two women turned up, looking beautiful, looking feminine, they had a fantastic, beautiful, tasteful wedding as such, and again, it wasn't the trope of, like, oh, well, which one is wearing the pants, and which one is the man, and, all of this kind of stuff. It's like, no, we're just two women who happen to be in love with each other. It's very very well handled, I think.
Well, that's like it was kind of going off the boat, like with The Last of Us, for what's his face from fucking Parks and Rec. He was in it with the moustache. My God, I can't think of his name.
No, not coming to me.
But the guy where it was the gay relationship.
Yes.
In that, I thought, like, for me, I thought, Jesus, they should have more
of this
that in shows, because
it's just so normalised.
Yeah, where it's like, it's not like Queer Eye for the Straight Guy or something.
Yeah, like and it's not put down as a talking point either. It's just, this is just another relationship that happens to be going on. And I think it's nice as well for, like,
Nick Offerman.
There you go. Yeah. It's nice for, I think, people to know they're being represented, and they're being represented just, sort of in normal lives, rather than like, oh, look, I'm a character on the telly. They're going to use me as, sort of, there's the black one, there's the gay one, there's the...
Their sexuality should be secondary to the character, like, or the story and stuff.
Like it is in real life as such, like, you don't go around telling people like, hey, did you know I'm straight and married to a man? It's like, exactly. It's just ridiculous.
But, I suppose, like, I mean, they were ahead with a lot of stuff, and even as well, I suppose, that the single mothers at the time were like,
that's what I mean. There was nearly kind of
this
stigma
thing
against.
Yeah. But you would have had it on some news show or talk shows. There was like shows like Sally Jesse, Raphael, and Jenny Jones.
Oh God, yeah.
And they'd have things on like where they nearly try and villainize single mothers as, oh, these single mothers are destroying the world and destroying the country with their.
That's it. And yet you have the likes of when sort of when Rachel ended up having Emma. She was co-parent with Ross, but she didn't turn into your stereotypical sort of single mother that you see on the telly. She was still all about, no, I'm going to have a career, but I'm going to do it while also being a good mum, and I'm going to have family support, and I'm going to link which is just healthy kind of, sort of portrayal of what people do.
I think it caught kind of like, say, our generations and the generation slightly ahead of us is kind of like the way things actually was in real life. Like, obviously not with the fucking money, because that's the thing that happened with Friends, I think. At the start it was like, all right, they're all broke, they don't have money and stuff, and then all of a sudden they like Joey became a fucking soap opera star, but you have to kind of go that trajectory, and I suppose then you can take money out of it, so money isn't part of the storyline, so you can do whatever the fuck you want. Whereas, like, for a lot of our generation, especially in the 90s, it was like no one had money. That was like the boom was over. There was no fucking boom. Things were shit, and it was just
everyone
like
was unemployed. That was it. But that, I suppose, they always had to address that. Why? How did Monica have such a fantastic apartment slap bang in the middle of New York? And it's like, oh, it used to be my grandma's, and I'm subletting, and it was rent controlled, and nowadays, Jesus, you can imagine that apartment in New York. Good God, my God.
Sure, we were looking at that thing. Was it on Vice or maybe New York Post or some kind of YouTube thing where they were like, oh, it was like a small apartment, and it was
$3.5 grand or something a month. It's
and it was just like money. What? But it's it's.
I mean, it was a phenomenon that ran for probably a decade, and didn't kind of lose momentum across the whole decade. It didn't lose momentum at all. Like, I could never really get into the Big Bang Theory, and it was one of those shows where you told, because it was at a time where nerd culture started becoming big, and like, I mean, it would be like what would be considered nerd. I remember looking at a couple of episodes going like, this doesn't represent. This is like fucking actually insulting. To where it's just mocking people, and as well, it's just, I don't know. Maybe if you got into it, but like, I can't say, I know it's massive and it's a global phenomenon as well, but I don't think it's up there with Friends. I don't think in 10 years' time people will be another generation will discover it.
With it, I don't see how it could appeal to as many people.
I think as well, it's probably a bit too pop cultural kind of referential as well. Friends is just, I don't think you need to know stuff about the 90s to get it. It's just about people making their way in life kind of thing, and kind of their friendship bonds and, growing up a little bit. And there's not all these like throwaway references like, oh, did you see what Superman did? And, let's talk about, there's no direct
as well, there's no political references as well, which as well, I think keeps it.
Yeah, it keeps it fresh.
Yeah,
doesn't date.
out of time, yeah. Which is what I was surprised, because, like, I mean, they didn't address 9/11. 9/11 would have happened when they were filming it in New York, and there was no, like, I mean, I think they're probably right, not because, like...
Yeah. And especially at the time, it was a lot, people were like, how would you address it even? So it's like, best to keep going and keep, the New York, their little corner of New York safe and sound.
But as well, people are dealing with that shit in real life. And they wanted escapism. They want to fucking be turned on an episode of Friends and...
having to see, oh God, that's a disaster.
Yeah, people dealing with trauma and stuff,
That's it, yeah.
And there's other shows for that.
Yes, exactly.
Like Star Trek Deep Space Nine.
Yes.
Bloody Bajorans.
I was just going to say, genocide.
Coming to our planet.
Terrible altogether, yeah. But again, I mean, you have the whole thing as well, like Phoebe discovering her family and, sort of deadbeat dad, and you have all these kind of things as well, where it's, you get vested into people's like emotional journey, and you get vested into kind of going, geez, I hope she does find
and Phoebe's whole journey of having the triplets as well
for her stepmother. I mean, like, there's so many different relationships going on the whole time, like, and they're all kind of carried out quite kind of, I don't know, realistically, I suppose is probably the best way to put it. Even though you do, like, I mean, her stepbrother Frank is just such an over-the-top character, but at the same point, it's kind of believable.
He went to, oh God, I can't think of that chap's name.
Giovanni.
Yeah, Ribisi.
Yeah.
Like, he went on to be very serious actor and just kind of like very well respected. And
I think he was at the time as well. I think when he, after the first season, when he came back, he would have been fairly well respected at that stage, So it is such a weird thing to see him playing this fucking lunatic loser, I suppose.
Who I always felt sorry for was Mona in it.
Oh God, yeah.
Ross's girl, because like Mona was...
She was so cool.
She did nothing,
she was just, She was so lovely, and yet all the time she just got shat on.
Yeah, and she was just like,
fair enough, like. But yeah, I mean, like, overall, Friends, what were your standout
don't watch
episodes?
it. It'd have to be the leather trousers one.
Of course. Yeah.
I
think the routine that always.
Oh, the dance routine,
cracks me up no end, and it's just because the two of them look so fucking goofy doing it, like, and they really get into it as well. And you can picture, like, oh God, Ross and Monica doing that when they were kids, like,
I think the sandwich one as well.
Yes,
that fucking like
not
Ross,
Joey's sandwich, Ross's sandwich.
Yeah, where he's like, someone ate my sandwich, and then kind of with the
my sister, get off my
and it's just a reaction here. Those episodes where Ross was like,
an awful lot of them were Ross standout episodes. Like, I mean, even like I was showing you you didn't get it there recently, and it was an ad for like furniture movers, and I was like, pivot, and you're like, what? But again, another it's just so stupid, like, but it's so. We've all been there, we've all done it, we've all tried to bring a fucking sofa up the stairs, and you've been the one going, pivot, fucking listen to what I'm saying. But yes, I do think most of the standout episodes are probably
the synthesizer one as well.
Yes,
I think was just fucking
hilarious.
Yeah. But it's mostly Ross. Like, I can't think of, like, say, standalone episodes with, like, I mean, but see, that's the thing, there's hundreds of fucking episodes,
and
I
suppose
all
there's
actually
loads of
quite good,
moments as well that Joey wearing all of Chandler's clothes, it just, how is that the opposite? That's not the opposite, but you just have all these really stupid moments,
things that ended up becoming part of, like, the vocabulary of kind of like people like going commando. I think that's still a thing, and I do think that was like a Friends creation.
Possibly,
I don't think, there was a lot of
floopy as well, I suppose. A lot of people that use terminology like that.
Smelly cat. But that was the thing, whenever there was like Phoebe centric episodes, it was always
they all turned a bit silly, didn't they? I think,
where I wasn't really overly keen on, like the one where Chrissy Hines showed up and started singing, so where it was really kind of a thing, kind of like, oh, let's shoehorn Chrissy Hines in. And it's like, fuck, like Chrissy, she must have had an album out at the time.
I suppose it's just some people just like to turn like Danny DeVito, turn up as a stripper,
Yeah, that was nearly prototype Frank Reynolds, wasn't it?
That's it, you could see it straight away. That's, he's descended into Frank, I think, at that stage already in his career,
But I suppose sweet moments in it, I think Chandler and Monica getting together, those kind of part where the wedding as well was quite nice.
Yeah, the proposal, all of that kind of stuff. Yeah, you have all these like really nice standout moments. And I think even just sort of the relationship between Chandler and Joey as well. You know, they're bros for life. Like, you know, the chick and the duck. You know, and of course you have all this like cast of kind of supporting characters as well. Like you've got Traeger, you know, sort of the janitor, and he's like, I just want to learn how to dance to impress a woman, you know, and it just turns out he's a really nice guy and just a bit misunderstood.
But that's, as it went on, there was less and less supporting characters or people that stayed in on it. Like Mike stayed in it, obviously. But obviously that they'd introduce people to be just in a relationship and just nearly get rid of them, discard them like 2 or 3 episodes into it. Like what's his name, Michael? He was in True Romance. He was going with Phoebe. He was the cop in it.
Oh yeah. I can't even think of his name.
But that was like, because it did seem like that it goes, and then just as soon as they moved in,
done.
It was over and done with, and it was just like there. You know where you kind of go, there must have been something, because like that happened in Seinfeld with poor Susan, they did the whole season with her, and then they were like, they never said who was complaining, saying that she didn't fit.
But she was just killed off, and
they killed her off, and it was like, Jesus Christ, like, I mean, it was brilliant for it served the story really well, and it was like the kind of thing that would happen to George, so it fit that well. But like for her, that just, I think it would have been interesting if she did live and seeing George married, and you know, just him being miserable married, with it, that he couldn't get out of it. Would have been, although like, you know, it was just George's character was fucking great, like, but I don't know. But yeah, it's like, after looking back at like 10, 11 episodes over about the space of a month.
Episodes? You mean seasons?
Oh yeah, seasons. Yeah. It's I'm really, really surprised how well it held up. Like, I haven't looked at it, or we haven't looked at it in a long time. Really, really liked it. I'd look at it, I feel kind of nearly lost.
Yeah, we're kind of like, what's we put on now? Exactly. Or so used to just sitting down, I'll throw on an episode of Friends.
Because when you try and think of something to put on to replace it, like, it doesn't seem like there's anything.
As well with Friends, I think it is one of these things. It has a through storyline, as in a through arc, that, you know, things happen, things develop and all the rest, but you can throw on any episodes of Friends and just sit down and just dip in wherever you want. It doesn't have to be, got to start from the beginning, like, I don't know what's going on. It's like, it's 6 people, they're friends, shit happens, funny shit happens, and that's it.
Mac and cheese. I loved mac and cheese, and the robot was so terrible.
And poor Joey got offended the robot designer so much, like,
But yeah, it's very hard to replace it. Like when I think at the time probably took it for granted at how good it was. And it's only afterwards when you see that, like, there really hasn't been a show. There's not a lot of shows that hit the same
pinnacle now.
Like, I think Schitt's Creek was brilliant, but it's brilliant in a totally different way.
And it didn't have because I suppose of the nature of watching TV nowadays, people are streaming, it's not being seen at the same time every week, it doesn't have the same cultural kind of zeitgeisty kind of thing, and people are like, I mean, your brother watched it like 2 years before we discovered it, I'd say, as well, you know, but you don't get these chances to talking about it with everyone.
Where it was like newspapers covering kind of Ross and Rachel and stuff at the time.
Will they, won't they?
But like, even, I don't, but it's just, but even just as a show itself, taking the streaming aspect aside, like, we've gone off and look at new show, and even say Brooklyn Nine-Nine, which people were saying was going to be, you know, well, I thought it'd be like a replacement for The Office. It wasn't. I didn't really, I wouldn't look at that show again.
No.
And like, 2 of us big fans of Andy Samberg. I'm not saying it's a bad show, but it's just
you kind of you watch it you watch it once and it's kind of like, you laugh at it, but you're kind of like, I'm not going to rewatch this a million times.
I think it's more Parks and Rec schmaltzy as opposed to where The Office, it's bizarre saying now, The Office had a bit of a fucking edge to it, but you know, there's very, like, if anyone has any recommendations for comedy shows to start watching, please, like, you know, share them with us, because like Always Sunny is probably
one of our favorites
times,
I would imagine,
probably because, like, I think most Irish people say it, like, they lived that life, the Always Sunny in Philadelphia life at some stage or another, hanging around the bar, you know.
Yeah, just being awful people.
But yeah, there just doesn't seem to be.
Yeah, nothing to replace Friends.
Anything
Will they be there for you? They'll always be there for you, Friends.
Oh, God. But yeah, look, if people want to share their views on it, leave a comment below or kind of message us some way. We're over on Instagram. We're on X, Twitter as well. If you want to pop over there, and we'll talk to you. But so, like, until next week. What was that?
That was a clap, 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 clap.
You sound like you're murdering a duck. But yes, goodbye.